Kyle Hayes adjusted his dark blue uniform one last time before stepping into the massive council chamber. As Earth's first ambassador to the Galactic Council, he carried the hopes and fears of his entire species on his shoulders. The chamber was huge, bigger than any building Kyle had ever seen on Earth. Curved walls stretched up into shadows and strange lights floated in the air like captured stars. The place was filled with aliens. Kyle had studied pictures and videos during his training, but seeing them in person was different. A group of tall, thin beings with purple skin stood near one wall, their forearms moving in graceful patterns as they talked. Nearby, creatures that looked like walking trees swayed gently, their bark-like skin covered in glowing symbols. In the center of the room, a massive tank held something that might have been a jellyfish, if jellyfish could grow to the size of a small car and think like a person. Kyle's advisor, Dr. Lisa Morgan, walked beside him. She was a scientist who had spent years studying alien life forms from the few encounters Earth had experienced. Her job was to help Kyle understand what they were seeing and hearing. Behind them both, Commander Jake Sullivan followed in his military dress uniform. Jake was there to observe and protect, though Kyle hoped protection would not be needed. The three humans drew stares as they entered. Some aliens stopped talking to watch them pass. Others turned away quickly, as if looking at humans was somehow dangerous or rude. Kyle tried to smile and nod politely, but the reactions made him uncomfortable. At the center of the chamber stood a raised platform where the main council members sat. The most impressive was the overseer, a being made of what looked like living crystal. Light moved through its body in slow, beautiful patterns. When it spoke, its voice sounded like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "Welcome, representatives of the species known as humans," the overseer said. "We gathered today to discuss the possibility of formal contact between your people and the greater galactic community." Kyle stepped forward. "Thank you for this opportunity. Humanity is excited to learn from our galactic neighbors and to share what we can offer." Around the room, holographic displays showed star maps of the galaxy. Kyle had seen similar maps in Earth's databases, but these were far more detailed. They showed trade routes connecting thousands of worlds, marked territories of different species and resource locations throughout space. The maps were beautiful and complex, showing a galaxy full of life and activity. But something was wrong with the maps. Kyle studied them more carefully as the overseer continued speaking about trade agreements and cultural exchanges. There was a section of space that should have shown Earth and the other human colonies, but instead there was just empty gray space. No stars, no planets, no trade routes. It was as if that entire section of the galaxy simply did not exist. Dr. Morgan noticed it too. She touched Kyle's arm gently and pointed at the nearest display. "Look at Sector 7, she whispered. "That's where we should be, but there's nothing there." Kyle nodded but tried to focus on what the overseer was saying. The crystal being was discussing the rules that governed contact between species, the laws that prevented conflicts, and the benefits of joining the galactic community. It all sounded reasonable and welcoming. Then a new alien approached the platform. This one looked like a giant insect, with 6 arms and wings that sparkled like jewels. Its name, according to Kyle's notes, was Clickwhistle 7, and it represented the Zephyrian Trade Union. "Honored Overseer," Clickwhistle 7 said, its voice making musical sounds. "The trade union is interested in establishing commercial relationships with the human species. We would like to know more about their territory and resources." Kyle saw his chance. "We would be happy to discuss trade opportunities. Our space includes several systems with valuable resources. Perhaps we could start with exchanges in our local region." The moment Kyle mentioned human territory, something strange happened. Clickwhistle 7's wings stopped moving and it took a step backward. Around the chamber, conversations stopped. The floating lights seemed to dim. "Local region," Clickwhistle 7 repeated, its voice higher now. "You mean the area around your home system?" "Yes," Kyle said, confused by the reaction. "We have colonies in several nearby systems that could serve as trading posts." More aliens were staring now. Some were backing away from the humans. The tree-like beings had stopped swaying, their glowing symbols flickering rapidly. Even the jellyfish creature in its tank seemed agitated, its body pulsing with darker colors. Dr. Morgan leaned closer to Kyle. "Something's wrong," she whispered. "They're all acting scared." The overseer's crystal body flashed brighter for a moment. "Perhaps we should focus on cultural exchanges first," it said quickly. "Trade agreements can be discussed later, after we have established better understanding between our peoples." Kyle was not satisfied with that answer. He had studied the briefing materials carefully, and cultural exchanges were usually the last step in diplomatic contact, not the first. Trade and territory agreements came first because they were easier to negotiate. "I noticed that our territory doesn't appear on your star maps," Kyle said, gesturing to the holographic displays. "Is there a reason for that?" The silence that followed was complete. Every alien in the chamber stopped moving. The floating lights went completely still. Even the background hum of the station's system seemed to quiet. Commander Sullivan stepped forward slightly, his hand moving unconsciously toward where his weapon would be if he were armed. His military training was telling him that something was very wrong. The overseer's light patterns changed, becoming faster and more chaotic. "Some regions of space require special consideration," it said finally. "Not all areas are suitable for standard mapping procedures." "What kind of special consideration?" Kyle asked. But the overseer was already rising from its platform. "This session is concluded," it announced. "We will schedule further meetings after we have had time to review today's discussions." Around the chamber, aliens began leaving quickly. Some moved toward exits Kyle had not even noticed. Others seemed to simply fade away, as if they had never been there at all. Click Whistle 7 spread its wings and flew toward the ceiling, disappearing through an opening high above. Within minutes, the huge chamber was nearly empty. Only Kyle, Dr. Morgan, and Commander Sullivan remained, standing alone among the silent holographic displays that still showed the galaxy with its mysterious gray void where Earth should be. "That was not normal," Dr. Morgan said quietly. "Commander?" Sullivan was studying the exits, noting which ones the aliens had used and how quickly they had moved. "No," he agreed. "That was fear. They were afraid of us, or afraid of something connected to us." Kyle walked closer to one of the star maps. Up close, he could see that the gray area was not just empty space. There were faint lines around its edges, like a border or barrier. Whatever was hiding human space from these maps was deliberate. "They know something we don't," Kyle said. "And whatever it is, it's big enough to scare an entire galactic community." Dr. Morgan was taking readings with a small device from her kit. "The energy patterns in this room changed when you mentioned our territory," she reported. Something reacted to those words, something in the station itself. Commander Sullivan joined them at the map display. "We need to report this to Earth immediately," he said. "And we need to find out what's really going on here." Kyle nodded, but he kept staring at the gray void on the map. Somewhere in that empty space was Earth, was humanity's future, was everything they had worked for. But according to the galaxy's most detailed maps, none of it existed. The question was not whether humans belonged in this galactic community. The question was why the galaxy was pretending humans did not exist at all. Colonel Amy Peterson sat in the secure briefing room deep beneath the Pentagon, staring at the report from Ambassador Hayes. The events at the Galactic Council had shaken everyone in Earth's government. For the first time in human history, they had proof that something was very wrong with humanity's place in the galaxy. Amy was in charge of the Alien Contact Intelligence Division, a group that had been formed after the first alien ships were detected near Earth. Her job was to understand what other species wanted and whether they posed a threat to humanity. Now she had a new mission that was much more confusing. She needed to find out why aliens were afraid of humans. "Captain Clark, Dr. Stone, please come in," Amy called through the secure intercom. Captain Ben Clark entered first. He was a career intelligence officer who had spent years analyzing alien technology and behavior. Behind him came Dr. Rachel Stone, an astrophysicist who specialized in studying strange energy fields and unusual space phenomena. They were Amy's best people for this kind of investigation. "I've read the preliminary reports," Ben said as he sat down. "The aliens' reaction was definitely fear, not hostility. They're not planning to attack us, they're trying to avoid us completely." Rachel nodded, opening her tablet computer. I've been looking at the energy readings Dr. Morgan took at the station. There were massive power fluctuations when Ambassador Hayes mentioned human territory. Something was scanning the room, something big. Amy leaned forward. I'm putting together a task force to investigate this mystery. Ben, I want you to go through every first contact record we have. Look for patterns in how aliens react to humans. Rachel, I need you to analyze all the sensor data from our encounters with alien ships. What about Lieutenant Davis? Ben asked. She's been monitoring alien communications for months. Good point. Emma will join the team too. I want her to search for any mention of humans in alien transmissions. Amy stood up and walked to the large screen on the wall. It showed a map of human space with Earth at the center and the colonies spread out in a rough sphere around it. Someone or something doesn't want aliens to enter our space, Amy continued. We need to find out what's protecting us and why. Over the next 2 weeks, the team worked around the clock. Ben started by reviewing every alien encounter in human records. The pattern was clear and disturbing. Every alien ship that had detected humans had immediately changed course and left the area. Ships that had been heading toward human space would suddenly turn around and go somewhere else. Ships that had been scanning human worlds would stop their scans and move away. The strangest case was a Korthak exploration vessel that had been mapping star systems near Earth. According to the records, the ship had been working its way closer to the solar system, mapping each star along the way. Then, when it reached a point about 2 light-years from Earth, it stopped. The ship sat motionless for 3 days, then turned around and left at maximum speed. It's like they hit an invisible wall, Ben reported during one of their daily briefings. Something made them turn around, but our sensors never detected anything. Emma had been listening to alien radio transmissions and had found something even more interesting. Using the military's best translation computers, she had decoded conversations between alien ships and their homeworlds. The conversations were full of references that made no sense to human translators. They keep talking about something called the Terran barrier, Emma reported, and they mention a protected zone. But when I try to find more details, the conversations change topic very quickly. Rachel had been studying the sensor data from human ships that had encountered aliens. Every time a human vessel came close to an alien ship, the readings showed strange energy fluctuations. The fluctuations were too regular to be natural, but they didn't match any known technology. It's like there's an energy field around our ships, Rachel explained. But our own sensors can't detect it directly. I only see it as interference patterns in the background radiation. Amy was starting to see a bigger picture, but it was a picture that made no sense. So something is protecting human space from alien intrusion, but we don't know what it is or why it's there. The breakthrough came when Ben interviewed some of the alien refugees living on Earth. There were only a few dozen of them, aliens who had fled their homeworlds because of war or persecution. Most were grateful to be on Earth and willing to help their human hosts. But when Ben asked about human space and why aliens avoided it, their reactions were similar to what had happened at the Galactic Council. They became nervous and scared. Most refused to talk about it at all. One alien, a former Korthak warrior named Skullrender, was different. Skullrender had fought in several galactic wars and claimed to have seen things that most beings could not imagine. When Ben asked about the protected zone, Skullrender's reaction was immediate and intense. You should not ask such questions, Skullrender said, his voice shaking. Some things are older than the stars themselves. Some powers should not be disturbed. Ben pressed for more information. What powers? Who's protecting us? Skullrender looked around the room nervously, as if he expected someone to be listening. In the old wars before your species existed, there were beings who could reshape reality itself. They disappeared long ago, but their servants remain. The Watchers, the Guardians, they do not like to be noticed. Are they protecting humanity? Protecting or preparing, I do not know, Skullrender replied. But crossing the void around your worlds brings consequences. Some ships that tried to enter your space were never seen again. Others returned with their crews changed, their minds empty of memories. That night, Emma intercepted a transmission that confirmed their worst fears. The message was between 2 alien fleet commanders discussing patrol routes near human space. The transmission was heavily encrypted, but Emma's computers eventually broke the code. Maintain minimum safe distance from Sol system, the message read. Patrol vessels are not to approach within 5 light years of Terran colonies. Recent sensor readings indicate the Guardians remain active. Do not wake what sleeps in the deep. Amy called an emergency meeting. The 4 team members gathered in the secure briefing room, and Amy shared the latest findings with them. We're not alone out there, she began. Something powerful is watching over human space, and it's been doing so for a long time. The aliens call them Guardians or Watchers. They're old, probably older than any of the species we've met. Ben looked at his notes. Every alien we've talked to is terrified of them. Even the warriors, even the ones who fought in major wars. Whatever these Guardians are, they're more dangerous than anything else in the galaxy. Rachel had been working on a new theory. I think the energy field I've been detecting is some kind of early warning system. The Guardians know whenever aliens get close to human space. That's why alien ships turn around. They're being told to leave. Emma nodded. And the transmissions suggest that some aliens have tried to ignore the warnings. They didn't come back, or they came back wrong somehow. Amy stood up and walked to the star map again. The question is, why are we being protected? What makes humanity special enough to deserve this kind of attention? Maybe we're not being protected, Ben suggested quietly. Maybe we're being quarantined. Maybe there's something about humans that the Guardians don't want the rest of the galaxy to know about. The room fell silent as everyone considered that possibility. Were humans dangerous in some way they didn't understand? Were they being kept, isolated for the safety of other species or for their own safety? Amy looked at her team. We need more information. I'm authorizing a deep space mission to the edge of human territory. We're going to find these Guardians and get some answers. Outside the briefing room, in the depths of space, ancient sensors registered the humans' growing curiosity. Deep in hidden installations that had watched over Earth for millennia, ancient machines began to stir. The time of quiet observation was coming to an end. The exploration ship HSV Discovery floated at the edge of human space, its engines quiet and its sensors working at full power. Captain Tony Mitchell stood on the bridge, watching the starfield ahead. Somewhere out there was the invisible boundary that kept aliens away from human territory. His job was to find it. Dr. Rachel Stone sat at her science station, surrounded by screens showing energy readings and field measurements. She had been tracking the strange signals for 3 days now, and they were getting stronger as the ship moved farther from Earth. Captain, I'm detecting the energy patterns again, Rachel reported. They're much clearer out here, away from all the interference from our colonies. Tony nodded and looked at the other members of his crew. Dr. Kate Williams, the ship's physicist, was studying quantum field measurements on her own set of instruments. Professor Dan Cooper, their xenoarchaeologist, was reviewing alien artifact databases, looking for anything that might explain what they were finding. How far are we from the theoretical boundary? Tony asked. Kate checked her calculations. Based on the patterns Dr. Stone found, we should be very close. Maybe another hour at current speed. The Discovery had been traveling for a week, moving slowly outward from Earth toward the point where alien ships always turned around. The crew had been carefully monitoring everything, looking for any sign of the mysterious Guardians that protected human space. So far, they had found nothing visible. Space looked the same as always, filled with distant stars and empty darkness. But the instruments were telling a different story. Energy readings that made no sense were getting stronger with every hour of travel. Captain, you need to see this, Rachel called out, her voice excited but worried. I'm detecting massive artificial structures in subspace. Tony moved to her station and looked at the displays. The screen showed ghostly images of huge objects that seemed to exist in a different dimension from normal space. The objects were clearly built by intelligent beings, but they were enormous, bigger than any space station humanity had ever imagined. How big are those things? Tony asked. Rachel ran quick calculations. Each one is about the size of a small moon, and there are dozens of them arranged in a pattern around human space. Kate joined them at the science station. "They're not made of normal matter," she said, studying the readings. "The quantum signatures are completely foreign. This is technology we've never seen before." Professor Cooper looked up from his research. "I've been going through every alien artifact we've ever found, and nothing matches this. Whatever built these structures, they're not from any species we know about." Tony felt a chill run down his spine. Humanity had always assumed they were alone in their corner of the galaxy until they met other alien species. Now it seemed they had been wrong. Something had been watching them all along. "Can we get closer?" Tony asked. Rachel shook her head. "I wouldn't recommend it, Captain. The energy fields around those structures are incredibly powerful. If we get too close, they might notice us." But Tony was determined to learn more. "We came out here to find answers. Set course for the nearest structure, but go slowly. Monitor everything." As the Discovery moved closer to the hidden structures, the energy readings became even stronger. Kate's instruments started showing impossible results. The structures were not just monitoring space around them, they were actively changing the laws of physics in their immediate area. "Captain, this is incredible," Kate reported. "These things are creating localized alterations in space-time. They're generating fields that can influence matter and energy on a massive scale." Dan had been studying the design of the structures through the sensor readings. "The architecture is completely alien, but there are patterns I recognize. These look like monitoring stations or sensor arrays. They're designed to watch and record everything that happens in this area." Rachel made another discovery that sent chills through the entire crew. "Captain, these structures are scanning us. They know we're here." On the main screen, one of the ghostly structures seemed to turn toward their ship. Though it existed in subspace, the crew could feel its attention like a physical presence. The sensation was overwhelming, like being examined by something vast and ancient. "They're not just scanning our ship," Kate said, her voice barely above a whisper. "They're scanning us. Our minds, our bodies, everything about us." Tony felt the urge to turn the ship around and head back to Earth as fast as possible. The feeling was so strong that he had to grip his chair to keep from giving the order. Around him, his crew was experiencing the same overwhelming compulsion to flee. This is what happens to alien ships, Rachel realized. These structures don't just monitor approaching vessels. They influence the minds of anyone who gets too close. They make them want to turn around and leave. Dan was fighting the mental pressure, trying to focus on his instruments. "Captain, I'm detecting something else. There are ruins on nearby asteroids and dead planets. Ancient structures that match the design of these monitoring stations." Through tremendous effort, Tony managed to order the ship to investigate one of the ruins. The Discovery landed on a small, airless world that showed signs of having been inhabited millions of years ago. The ruins were massive, built from the same exotic materials as the monitoring stations. Kate and Dan put on spacesuits and explored the ruins while Rachel monitored them from the ship. What they found changed everything humanity thought they knew about their place in the galaxy. The ruins contained vast halls filled with images and symbols. Dan's translation equipment was able to decode some of the simpler messages. They told the story of an ancient species that had once ruled the galaxy, beings of incredible power and wisdom who had built the monitoring network. These beings called themselves the Architects, Dan reported over the radio. They created the sensor network to protect developing species from the dangers of galactic civilization. According to these records, they disappeared millions of years ago, but their automated systems continued to function. Kate made an even more startling discovery. "Captain, there are specific references to Earth in these ruins. The Architects were watching human evolution from the very beginning. They knew about us before we even developed language." The revelation was overwhelming. Humanity had not just stumbled into a protected zone by accident. They had been deliberately chosen and protected by beings of incredible power. The monitoring stations had been watching over Earth for hundreds of thousands of years. But why? What made humanity special enough to deserve such protection? The answer came from the deepest part of the ruins, in a chamber that seemed designed as a final message. The walls were covered with images showing the history of the galaxy, including terrible wars between species and the destruction of entire worlds. The Architects were trying to prevent another galactic war, Dan explained as he transmitted the images back to the ship. They identified species with the potential for either great good or great evil, and they protected them until they were ready to make their choice. Tony studied the images on his screen. They showed species that had been protected by the architects, some of which had gone on to become forces for peace and progress in the galaxy. Others had become conquerors and destroyers, so we're being protected until we're ready to choose what kind of species we want to be, Tony said. Rachel had been monitoring the energy readings around the ship, and she noticed something alarming. Captain, the monitoring stations are powering up. Their energy output is increasing rapidly. On the screens, the ghostly structures were becoming brighter and more solid. Ancient weapon systems that had slept for millions of years were coming online. The discovery was no longer just being observed, it was being evaluated. Then, cutting through all the ship's communication systems, came a voice. It spoke in perfect English, though it carried harmonics and overtones that no human voice could produce. "Your species approaches the time of choosing," the voice said. "You have grown in knowledge and capability. Soon you must decide what you will become. The protection we have provided cannot last forever. Others watch and wait to see what emerges from the quiet space we have maintained around your worlds." Tony found his voice. "Who are you? Are you the architects? We are what remains of those who came before. We are the guardians they left behind. Your species shows promise, but promise alone is not enough. The galaxy is vast and dangerous. You must prove you can survive and thrive without our protection." The structures were growing brighter, and the ship's instruments were registering power levels that defied measurement. "What happens if we're not ready?" Tony asked. The answer came with a chill that reached into every member of the crew. "Then, the protection ends, and you face the galaxy as you truly are. The choice approaches, children of Earth. Choose wisely." The voice faded, and the structures began to dim, but their message was clear. Humanity's time of safety was ending. Soon, they would have to stand on their own in a galaxy full of dangers they could barely imagine. The emergency meeting in the White House Situation Room brought together the most important people in human government and military. President Laura Bush sat at the head of the long table, her face serious as she listened to Captain Mitchell's report from the Discovery mission. Around the table sat General Rick Adams, head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and Dr. Helen Foster, leader of the Science Council. "Let me make sure I understand this correctly," President Bush said after Tony finished his briefing. "Humanity has been living under the protection of ancient alien technology for our entire existence as a species, and now these guardians are telling us that protection is about to end." Tony nodded. "That's correct, Madam President." The voice was very clear. "We're approaching what it called the time of choosing. We have to prove we can survive in the galaxy without their help." General Adams leaned forward. "What kind of threats are we talking about? What have these architects been protecting us from?" Dr. Foster had been studying the data from the Discovery mission for days. According to the information Professor Cooper found in the ruins, the galaxy has been through several major wars. Species that develop space travel often become aggressive and try to conquer their neighbors. The architects were trying to prevent another galaxy-wide conflict, so they've been keeping us isolated until we mature enough to handle contact with other species, President Bush said. "Or until we're strong enough to defend ourselves," General Adams added grimly. Agent Carlos Rodriguez entered the room carrying a thick folder of classified documents. As head of the Terran Intelligence Service, Carlos had access to information that even most government officials never saw. His expression was troubled. "Madam President, I've been going through our oldest archives, looking for any evidence of these guardians in our past," Carlos reported. "I found something that changes everything we thought we knew about human space exploration." Carlos opened his folder and spread out photographs and documents on the table. "These are reports from the very first interstellar missions, back when we were just starting to explore nearby star systems. Captain Steve Johnson's mission to Alpha Centauri in 2157. Captain Linda Parker's survey of the Wolf 359 system in 2163. Every single one of these early missions reported finding ancient ruins. Dr. Foster examined the photographs. The pictures looked exactly like the structures Professor Cooper had found on the dead world near the Guardian stations. These ruins are everywhere in human space, she realized. The architects didn't just build a few monitoring stations. They built an entire network of installations throughout this entire region of the galaxy. Carlos nodded. And here's the most important part. Every single ruin contains the same symbol. He held up a photograph showing a carved stone wall. In the center was a clear image of a human figure surrounded by protective circles. They were planning this protection for us from the beginning, President Bush said quietly. Even before humans existed, they were preparing to protect us. Dr. Foster had been running calculations based on the age of the ruins. Madam President, the carbon dating on these artifacts shows they're over 200,000 years old. That's approximately when modern humans first evolved on Earth. The timing can't be a coincidence. The implications were staggering. Humanity had never been alone in the universe. From their very first steps as a species, they had been watched and protected by beings of incredible power and foresight. General Adams was thinking about the military aspects of the situation. If this protection is ending, we need to know what kind of threats we'll be facing. Agent Rodriguez, what do our intelligence sources tell us about alien military capabilities? Carlos pulled out another set of documents. The news isn't good, General. Our analysis of alien technology shows that most species are centuries ahead of us in military development. The Zephyrians have energy weapons that could destroy our largest ships with single shots. The Korthak Empire has battle fleets that number in the thousands. If we had to fight any major alien power right now, we would lose badly. Commander Paul Garcia, who ran the Deep Space Monitoring Station at Alpha Centauri, joined the meeting via secure video link. His face appeared on the main screen and he looked worried. Madam President, I have an urgent update from the monitoring station, Paul reported. We're detecting massive energy signatures moving in deep space, beyond the edge of known alien territory. The signatures match what Dr. Stone found near the Guardian stations. Something very large and very powerful is moving in our direction, Dr. Foster studied the sensor readings that Paul transmitted. These energy patterns are enormous. Whatever's creating them is much larger than the monitoring stations we found. Could it be more Guardian technology? President Bush asked. Possibly, Dr. Foster replied. But the power levels are much higher than anything we've seen before. If these are Guardian ships, they're warships, not monitoring equipment. The meeting was interrupted by another urgent communication. Ambassador Kyle Hayes appeared on a second screen, calling from the Galactic Council station. His expression was grim. Madam President, I have disturbing news from the Council, Kyle reported. The Overseer has requested a private meeting with me. It wants to discuss what it calls the changing situation in the protected zone. What did it tell you? President Bush asked. Kyle took a deep breath. The Overseer revealed that the galactic community has known about our Guardians for millions of years. They call them the Architects of Silence. According to the Overseer, the Architects were the most powerful species the galaxy has ever known. They disappeared mysteriously, leaving behind only their automated protection systems and a single protected world, Earth. The room fell silent as everyone processed this information. Humanity was not just protected by ancient technology. They were the chosen inheritors of the galaxy's most powerful vanished species. There's more, Kyle continued. The Overseer says that other species in the galaxy have been waiting for millennia to see what would emerge from the protected zone. Some expect humans to be peaceful and wise like the Architects. Others fear that humans might be conquerors who will try to rebuild the Architects' empire. General Adams stood up and walked to the wall map showing human space. So we're not just facing the end of our protection, we're facing a test. The entire galaxy is watching to see what kind of species we really are. Agent Rodriguez had more bad news. Our intelligence sources indicate that several alien powers are already making plans based on the assumption that our protection is ending. The Korthak Empire is moving battle fleets toward the edge of our space. The Zephyrian Trade Union is preparing what they call protective measures. in case humans proved to be hostile. Dr. Foster was studying all the data they had collected. The pattern is becoming clear. The galaxy has been through terrible wars before. The architects tried to prevent future conflicts by protecting promising species until they were ready to join galactic civilization peacefully. But some of the species they protected became threats instead of allies. So the galaxy is preparing for the possibility that we might be the next great threat, President Bush summarized. Commander Garcia's voice came from the speaker again. Madam President, the energy signatures I detected are getting closer. Whatever's coming, it will reach the edge of our space within days, not weeks. The president looked around the room at her advisors. The weight of humanity's future rested on the decisions they would make in the next few days. They had learned that they were not just another species trying to find their place in the galaxy. They were the inheritors of an ancient legacy, and the galaxy was watching to see whether they would use that legacy for good or evil. General Adams, I want our military forces on full alert, President Bush ordered. Dr. Foster, continue analyzing the Guardian technology. Agent Rodriguez, monitor all alien communications for any indication of their intentions. Ambassador Hayes, try to learn everything you can from the Galactic Council. As the meeting ended, everyone understood that humanity was facing its greatest challenge. For hundreds of thousands of years, they had grown and developed under the protection of beings they never knew existed. Now that protection was ending, and they would have to prove to themselves and to the galaxy that they deserved the legacy they had been given. Outside, in the depths of space, ancient machines that had waited patiently for millennia began to stir with new purpose. The time of quiet watching was over. The time of testing had begun. President Laura Bush stood in the Oval Office, looking out at the night sky through the bulletproof windows. Somewhere up there, massive alien fleets were moving toward human space, and ancient Guardian ships were preparing for something that could change the galaxy forever. The weight of every human life rested on the decisions she would make in the next few hours. Behind her, General Rick Adams was on a secure video call with fleet commanders around human space. Admiral Janet Torres reported from the Mars Defense Station, while Admiral Bobby Lee coordinated Earth's orbital defenses. The human military was as ready as it could be, but everyone knew their weapons were primitive compared to what was coming. Madam President, General Adams said, ending his call, all our fleets are in position, but our admirals are unanimous. If the alien fleets decide to attack, we can't stop them. Our best estimate is that we could hold out for maybe 6 hours against a full galactic assault. Dr. Helen Foster entered the office carrying her latest analysis of the Guardian technology. Her team had been working around the clock to understand the ancient machines that had protected humanity for so long. The Guardian ships have taken positions around our entire space, Helen reported. They're not just near Earth anymore. There are massive constructs near every human colony, every space station, every ship we have in deep space. Whatever's about to happen, the Guardians are preparing for it everywhere humans exist. Agent Carlos Rodriguez joined them, his face grim. Intelligence reports indicate that 12 different alien species have fleets moving toward our borders. The Korthak Empire alone has over 300 warships in their battle group. The Zephyrians have brought what they call planet crackers, weapons that can destroy entire worlds. President Bush turned from the window. And they're all coming because they think we might be a threat? Some of them, yes, Carlos replied. But our sources suggest that others are coming to be the first to make contact if we prove to be peaceful. There are alien species that remember the architects as wise and benevolent. They're hoping we'll be the same. The president walked to her desk, where reports from around human space painted a picture of a species preparing for its final test. On Luna, scientists were frantically trying to decode more Guardian technology. On Mars, military engineers were building new defensive systems. On Earth, billions of people watched the news and waited to learn their fate. What about Ambassador Hayes? President Bush asked. Any word from the Galactic Council? Carlos checked his secure tablet. The Council has evacuated their station. The overseer sent one final message saying that the ancient protocols are now in effect. Whatever that means, it doesn't sound good. A new voice joined the conversation as Commander Paul Garcia appeared on the main screen from Alpha Centauri. His monitoring station had become the front line of humanity's contact with whatever was approaching. Madam President, the Guardian ships are doing something new, Paul reported. They're broadcasting signals toward the approaching alien fleets. We can't decode the messages, but the alien ships have stopped advancing. They're holding position, about 10 light years from our border. Dr. Foster studied the energy readings from Paul's station. The Guardian broadcasts are incredibly powerful. They're transmitting on frequencies that can reach across the entire galaxy. This isn't just communication. This is an announcement. Before anyone could respond, every screen in the Oval Office suddenly flickered and changed. The face of the ancient Guardian entity appeared, the same voice that had spoken to Captain Mitchell's crew near the monitoring station. "Leaders of humanity," the Guardian said, its words carrying harmonics that seemed to resonate in their bones. "The time of choosing has arrived. For 200,000 years, we have watched over your species, protecting you from the chaos and violence that has consumed the galaxy. Now you must prove that our protection was worthwhile." President Bush stepped forward. "We're grateful for your protection, but we never asked for it. We never asked to be isolated from the galaxy." "Protection was necessary," the Guardian replied. "Your species carries within it the potential for great good or terrible evil. Like the architects who came before, you have the ability to reshape the galaxy according to your will. The question is, what kind of galaxy you will create." General Adams couldn't contain himself. "What do you mean, like the architects? What happened to them?" The Guardian's image shifted, showing holographic scenes of incredible beauty and terrible destruction. The architects faced the same choice you face now. They chose to use their power to bring peace to the galaxy, to protect developing species, to prevent the endless wars that had ravaged countless worlds. But their choice came at a cost. To maintain galactic peace, they gave up their physical existence and became the eternal guardians of that peace. Dr. Foster realized the full implications. "You're not just ancient machines. You're the architects themselves, transformed into energy beings to continue protecting the galaxy." "We are what they chose to become," the Guardian confirmed. "And now humanity faces the same choice. Your species has developed the technology and the wisdom to either save the galaxy or destroy it. The other species know this. They have come to witness your decision." President Bush felt the weight of history pressing down on her. "What are our options?" The Guardian's image expanded to show the alien fleets waiting at the edge of human space. "You can choose isolation. We will maintain the barriers around your space and you can live quietly among your own kind. The galaxy will continue its cycles of war and peace without your involvement." The image changed to show scenes of human ships joining alien fleets working together to build great projects and explore distant galaxies. "You can choose integration. The barriers will be lowered, and you will join the galactic community as equals. Your voice will be heard in the councils of species, but you will have no special protection or authority." Finally, the image showed human ships not joining alien fleets but leading them, with beings of many species working together under human guidance. Or you can choose leadership. Like the architects before you, you can accept the responsibility of guiding galactic civilization toward peace and progress. But this choice requires the greatest sacrifice. General Adams was the first to understand. "You're asking us to become like you, to give up our physical existence to become guardians of the galaxy." "Not all of your species," the Guardian clarified, "but your leaders, your wisest and most capable individuals, would join us in the great work of protecting developing civilizations and preventing galactic wars. Your species would become shepherds of peace, as the architects were before you, President." Bush looked around the room at her advisors. Each choice offered humanity a different future, but only one offered the galaxy a chance for lasting peace. "What happens if we refuse all three options?" she asked. The Guardian's expression became sad. "Then the barriers fall, and you face the galaxy without our protection or guidance. Some species will welcome you. Others will fear you. Eventually, war will come, as it always has. The cycle of conflict that the architects died to prevent will begin again." Outside the White House, people around the world were watching the conversation on every television and computer screen. The Guardian had made sure that every human could hear the choice their species faced. President Bush thought about the billions of people depending on her decision. She thought about the alien fleets waiting in space, some hoping for peace and others preparing for war. She thought about the ancient architects who had sacrificed everything to protect the galaxy from itself. "Can't make this choice alone," she said finally. "This decision belongs to all of humanity." The Guardian nodded. "Wise. You have 24 hours to decide. The alien fleets will wait. The galaxy will watch. Choose well, children of Earth. The future of all life depends on your answer." The screen went dark, leaving the human leaders alone with the greatest decision in their species' history. Outside, the stars seemed to hold their breath as humanity prepared to choose not just their own destiny, but the destiny of an entire galaxy. President Bush looked at her advisors one more time, then walked to her desk to begin preparing humanity's answer to the universe.